just realized that the echo in here is crazy. So we will try to not scream. Well, I'll try to not scream because it seems like I don't think you scream.
I'm not a
but
screamer.
It's
no.
okay. It's all right. So I am here with, sir, tell the world who you are.
Yeah, so my name's Michael Aguilera. I'm currently the sous chef at Yangban Society in
Okay.
Arts District, LA,
Dope.
Los Angeles.
When did you
reppin'.
start this position?
This position I started the beginning of this year.
Okay.
Like right January 1st week of January is when I stepped into the management position.
Right.
Before that, I started off as a prep cook. I prepped for a couple months, and then I moved up to the line. I worked garde manger for couple weeks.
Right.
And then very quickly I was prepared for the management position, yeah.
Did you come in planning on being a manager?
No. Honestly, when I came into this place, I didn't have any plans. I just moved to LA. At the time I had 3 jobs. This was one of 3, but
Right.
I quickly realized that I liked it the most, and I saw potential for growth, personal growth, just in the kitchen here.
Right.
And then once I moved up to the line, because the daytime and nighttime are a little bit different in terms of like who's working and just what the work is. Once I moved up to the line, then I saw potential for like my ability to be a manager.
Right.
And like, take on more responsibility in terms of like helping run it as opposed to just being like a worker.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, it wasn't until then that I actually thought that I would do something like manage.
You're good there.
Cool.
All right. Can you hear yourself a little clear?
Yeah.
So these are I'll just school you a little bit. Cardio ID microphones. There's like a bunch of different microphones.
Yeah.
So if you're directly in front of it, it makes the sound better. And like I said, feel free to manipulate if you need to. So Michael Aguilera, super excited to have you on the show. As you know, I got a lot of history with Chef Kat and Chef John from Meadowood, and they're truly, I consider them my mentors. And I don't know if you can kind of speak to this, but I feel like there's a little bit of similarities between Korean culture and Latino culture.
Yeah. I mean,
Do you feel that?
For sure. I feel like just the way that the Korean culture deals with food is a lot similar to how Mexicans deal with food. Like, they're not afraid to go the extra step to like put in extra work to get a better product.
Right.
In terms of like fermenting, aging, like all of the things that they do to create flavors is work put into the food, and they appreciate it as for what it is, and not just like, oh, this is like a lot of extra work just to get this result. It's more of like they embrace that in terms of creating that kind of flavors and stuff in food with going the extra mile, putting in the extra work. And I see that similarity for sure, just off the top.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like culturally in terms of the people, I'm not too familiar with a lot of Korean culture in that sense, but for the food, from what I've seen, there's a lot of like similarities in that sense.
I would say it's the discipline that they have to the craft, and food is a big part of their culture. Like, they eat with their family, which is a big Latin thing as well. And I just find that when I talk to Chef John about how his mom was when he was younger, I'm like, my mom was literally the same. It's like that same strict immigrant household where you're like, you better fucking not fuck this up. Like, I came a long way to make sure you make it, So we'll take it from the beginning, all right? Sucio Talk podcast. So, where were you born?
I was born in the Central Valley of California, Fresno, California.
Okay. Fresno.
Yeah.
Hometown of Beans from Even Stevens.
Yeah. Really? I didn't even remember that. Yeah, that's true.
I only know that because my boy John Tyler Franson, who's R&D chef, I believe, for Chef Costow, he used to live in the town, and he was like, I used to sell weed to Beans. And I was like, damn, Beans was buying weed.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I was born in Fresno, California, born and raised.
Right.
Central Valley, yeah. It's an interesting place.
Heard that. I didn't mean to snitch on John Tyler, by the way. So what was food like growing up?
I grew up eating a lot of Mexican food, honestly. My grandma immigrated here when she was a lot younger, probably in her like late teens. But she still remained like very culturally Mexican, like never really liked to speak English, didn't really integrate too much into like American culture.
Right.
So
she wasn't interested.
yeah, no, she tried to maintain her like
Right.
her culture and being Mexican and like speaking Spanish, cooking Mexican food, like
Right.
just living like how she would have in Mexico to a certain extent, but here in the United States. And so I spent a lot of time at her house growing up with her. So I ate a lot of Mexican food.
Right.
We would go out and like, you know, cut nopales from the backyard and come inside and clean them and make breakfast. That was just like a day-to-day thing for us, you know. So I really, and my mom was an amazing cook as well. She made Mexican food too, but she would like experiment a little bit more with like other stuff just to keep it interesting and, you know, just for fun, for her own like, you know, entertainment kind of. I'm going to make something different today. But for the most part, it was pretty like 80% Mexican food is what I grew up eating.
Right, right.
And there's a big Latino culture in general in Fresno too. So that's like the food that's around, that's close, that's cheap, that's, you know, good. You know, you're going to get a good, satisfying meal and not like spend a lot of money and just day to day. So
right.
That's what I grew up eating, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
What were activities that you were doing when you were young? Like, were you into sports? Were you into watching TV, video games? Like,
no, I wasn't really too much into sports, honestly. I was kind of like a nerd. I went to like a little bit of a kind of like school for the advanced, I guess, or like the people that were more focused
AP
on school. Yeah, like AP kind of gate program stuff. So I really liked going to school in terms of like learning and stuff.
Right.
But I didn't have a lot of school spirit, I guess you can say. I hung out with like a bunch of the like, you know, like the punk kids or like the rejects or whatever.
Right.
And then I was into art a lot, but I didn't consider myself like a good artist in terms of like painting and drawing.
Were you attempting to paint and draw,
so
learning?
In my teenage years, I would paint murals. That was like kind of like the only project I did outside of school. It was like I was part of this mural program where it was kind of to like take kids from like going to the streets and stuff.
Yeah.
So we would, after school, we would get together and design murals, and then we would find like places that would allow us to paint them or that would contract us to paint them, and then we would go and like a group of us would go and like put up these huge murals on walls of just like different stuff all over town. So I was mural painting for like the end of my teenage years, which was something that I did that was like really, even to today, it brought me like a lot of cool things to my life, that just a perspective of art and community and just like being part of something bigger than just, you know, going to school every day, you know, kind of
right
thing.
Right. I always thought that was weird that we make schools for people that are good at school, but then we don't turn around and make school for people that aren't good at school.
Yeah.
And maybe we'd have more people in the workforce, like, you know, vocational school is kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like we just need more. Like, there was a high school, it was like a couple towns away. They taught farming and like equine, like horses and cows and shit. And that was like their high school. Like that was the thing. And so I didn't know this. I used to live like the next town over from the fucking school, and I didn't know about it until I went to culinary school. And this chick, Michaela, was like, "Oh yeah, my major was horses." I'm like, "In fucking high school?"
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
like
the way they roll.
Farming instead of learning programming.
Exactly.
I'm never gonna use.
I think that's way better. You know, why are you forcing? Obviously, people need to be educated, but I think we need to look at the education system and say, you know, sort of like what is necessary and what isn't.
Exactly.
And I think that's what is happening now in the culinary field. Things are like being audited, and motherfuckers are like, wait, maybe we shouldn't just do things because that's the way we did them.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know, and we'll get into your background of food, but I was French trained, right? So French training has a lot of rules. It has a lot of rules that ethnic food does not follow.
Yeah.
Right. So when I started like cooking personally, it sort of opened up the window of like opportunity of flavor, you know, because French cuisine is very like, you know, tight.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just got tired of a cuisine that, you know, oh, the dish isn't that good. Black truffles, caviar.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
butter, cream.
Exactly. So it's like, I'm not dogging it. They obviously created the system, you know, in which we work.
It works for a reason.
It works for a reason, for sure. You know, I recently talked to Escoffier over AI. I like created him on his fucking wiki bio.
What?
And I talked to him. And it's crazy, like, the shit that you can do now. But basically, I was, like, coming at it from the angle of, like, the brigade system is fucked up, basically. Like, hey, did you think about this, this, and that? And the way that the AI explained it, like, made a lot of fucking sense. And I was like, this is probably what this dude would say.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a point of organization that you didn't have before the brigade system.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the thing that we do that fucks it up is we take it to the ultimate.
Yeah, we apply it where it doesn't always need to be applied, you know.
And what is your opinion on, like, craft and the time it takes to get there, right? For example, if you're a sushi chef in Japan, you work 10 years just cooking the rice, right? Do you think that is a necessary thing? And do you think that if it's not necessary, does it take away from the culture of Japanese people doing sushi? You know?
I think that necessary, no, but I think that it's important for that culture to remain and for people to continue to do that, because it's what is preserving that culinary aspect that has been there for a long time, so that people nowadays can learn how to do that quicker and replicate it to a certain extent. But I do appreciate there still being that tradition of, like, taking the time and doing it the way it has always been done. You know, that I believe in that as, like, an importance to the culture of food. Technically, if it's necessary, I don't think so. I think a skilled cook could learn how to do that with a couple months of training or doing, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not necessary to apply that technique or that time in every situation, but I do think that it's important that people continue to do that, like, carry on that discipline.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it all boils down to like, what do you think success is?
Yeah.
Is it making money from your craft, or is it just getting better at your craft?
Or enjoying what you're doing every day, you know? Like,
exactly.
It takes a certain certain mindset to do something every single day like that. You know? It's repetitive. You're working with the same ingredients. But I mean, like, if you're enjoying it, then you've reached a certain level of success that so many people are never going to get to, you know?
Right.
Just because you've appreciated the simplicity of what you're doing and understand it's like there's a bigger picture to it, you know?
Right. What was your first job?
My first culinary job was
I'm talking about first job ever.
First job ever? I mean, I was working since I was, like, 14, like, cleaning offices, doing, like, what teenagers do, you know? But, like, we were always like, if you want spending money, go make it, you know? Like, my parents didn't just give us an allowance, or, like, you know, they were trying to have their own allowance. You know? It was like, we were not at least me and my older brother, we had to figure out how to make our own money if we wanted to have, like, spending money. We were taken care of, like, we were fed, roofed, you know, transportation, but, like, if we wanted to go out or hang out or buy something, we had to make our own money. So we would get, like, little odd jobs here, like cleaning offices, or just, like, picking up trash, or just doing stuff for people that we knew, you know? And I did that a lot as a teenager. I would also, which is really funny that I ended up in the industry. When I was younger, my dad worked in some restaurants too as, like, a front of the house manager, and he would have me, like, input all of his P&Ls and, like, random, like, spreadsheet stuff, because I was way faster on the computer than him, and he would, like, pay me or buy me stuff for doing that. So I spent, like, hours just, like, inputting restaurant P&Ls and like, filling out spreadsheets on the computer, just so that I could make some extra money. And it kind of, like, exposed me a little bit more to, like, the back end of restaurants, which I didn't realize I was doing until, like, later on. I was like, oh, I've done this before, you know. Like,
but what a great way to go into it, kind of understanding the money side of it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's something that's completely foreign to you when you first start.
Yeah,
you know?
you don't think about it if you're in the kitchen. You're just like, you know, that's not your priority.
Especially if you're teaching people how to cook, like, shit's going to get fucked up. So I'm always asking, like, is culinary school necessary, or should we more or less have more of an internship program within restaurants that can grow a cook, you know, from bottom to top, without them getting a lot of debt, right? But understanding that, like, okay, if you go to Susio University, you work at these 8 restaurants for 2 years each. That's 16 years of experience, right? And then you got chefs that are on board, and before you know it, you got this community of people that have all worked at the same restaurants, all came up together, and all kind of have that, like, positive mindset of what the future is for food, You know, I feel like I think Andres told me this from Snail Bar in Oakland. He's like, people don't know what they like until you kind of show it to them.
Yeah,
you know, and like so. It would be good to move people around, show them different things, versus that like mentality. When I got in the game, it was like, if you leave, you're never gonna make it. Like if you get out of this job, don't know where else you're gonna work because there's no other good restaurants, you know. Or if you're in 3 Michelin world, they say, fuck that casual place. That place doesn't respect food, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy that now all the guys that were in Michelin in 3 stars are all fucking doing casual food.
Yeah.
And even the chefs of those restaurants, right? I have a feeling, and I think that everybody kind of just tried to be Thomas Keller, whereas that they should have just tried to be themselves.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the Daniel Pattersons, the Skeens, the people who are these big name chefs during our era, but now don't have fucking restaurants, don't have a legacy anymore, right? And you got all these cooks that are displaced that have terrible fucking relationships with their mentors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who is doing something about this? Because
they're all traumatized.
Exactly. We all got daddy issues. I get it, you know? But at the end of the day, if we don't talk about shit, I feel like there's people you work for 8-10 years, and then when you call them, they won't pick up the phone. And it's like, well, what the fuck? I spent my time working for you so you'd be available to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For my whole life, basically, right? So I think that's the difference between a mentor and a boss, which is like, you know, how you were telling me about Chef John and Kat. Like, they're there every day. They are true mentors.
Yeah.
And, like, true cheerleaders, too, because even just the way they introduce you, like, the way they talked about you, it was like, oh, I mean, our sous chef, he was here, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they're really interested in pushing people forward. And they're honestly some of the humblest chefs of our time because they are on top and killing it. And they could be out here fucking telling everyone to go fuck themselves, but they're not.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think it's very, very commendable. Now, first job, what was your first culinary job?
So my first culinary job was when I was in culinary school, which was in Colorado,
Okay.
Denver, Colorado, and I worked at a gluten-free bakery.
Okay.
So it was like
Interesting.
I just had one of my classmates was working there, and they were like, "We need somebody," and I was like, "I need to make money," and so
Right.
I was going to school full time, and so I just needed something that was flexible, and so I went and started working at this gluten-free bakery, and it was this lady who had developed a gluten-free like dough recipe that works like a normal bread dough. And then we would take that and we would add stuff to it and make like all different kinds of like pizza doughs, hamburger buns, English muffins, croissants, like
Right.
all kinds of like bakery stuff with this dough, but it was all gluten free. And we would supply like big food companies like US Foods and Cisco
Really?
with our like gluten free, you know, bread options
Uh-huh.
for them. So we were creating like a huge amounts of just random gluten free pastries.
Was it a proprietary blend of
Yeah, she
flours
created-
and stuff?
Yeah, she kind of created her own blend, but using different like starches and stuff. It was her recipe, you know. The lady who owned it came up with it, and we would just like replicate that dough. But we didn't ever sold the like flour or anything. It was just the prepared products, you know.
Right.
And I worked there alongside a Liberian immigrant, and it was just like me, her, and like one other person that were just busting out a bunch of gluten-free baked goods. But that was like my first intro to like a production kitchen where you're actually making a lot of stuff and you're producing like high volume kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
And can you speak to that blend like versus a cup for cup, like Thomas Keller's
Honestly,
blend? You know,
it was. I'm not a huge gluten-free like advocate
right.
of.
So you
of
weren't
stuff.
just like eating all the pastries
No,
all the
but
time.
I was is the thing. That was that it ate like a normal bread.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a
okay.
little bit chewier, but like it really did. It was a really good like close to like gluten bread, you know.
Right.
So it was something that I was eating all the time, even though it was gluten free, and which you know I think as far as like the gluten free products I've tried, those are some of the best I've had.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any difference in the methods? Like, are you hydrating differently? Is it different times? Is it shorter because you're not building that gluten?
Yeah, I think it is a shorter, like in terms. Yeah, you don't really have to build the gluten. So once your dough is mixed and you start working with it, it's pretty much good
It's
to go.
done.
But as far as like proofing and stuff, it still requires the same amount depending on what you're making of like the proofing process and the baking process. But in terms of like mixing, resting, and using the dough, that it cuts the time like, by in half, you know.
Do you find when you're working with it that it is like bread dough?
Yeah, it works like bread dough.
Really?
You knead it, and like it works exactly like a bread dough.
Does it ever break? Can you overwork it?
Not really. It's a little. It's kind of hard to overwork it, but
Right.
also at the same time, like it is a bunch of gums and stuff. So if you do like work it too long, it kind of gets a little gummy and stuff. But not
Okay.
the same as like gluten, where it's like not usable, you know.
Right. Okay. And then have you you've obviously done regular baking as well, like just not
Yeah, I
gluten-free?
mean, I just by default kind of like in places I've worked have been doing like pastries and stuff, kind of at a basic level. But
Yeah.
most of the places I've worked, if they've needed somebody to do like to take over doing like baking and pastry, I've been able to like pick it up really quick and do it consistently. So I do have like a pretty decent experience with it, you know.
Right.
It's not something I'm super interested in.
Mhm.
I feel like if I were just doing baking and pastry, then I could get into it, but it always ends up being like I'm cooking and I'm doing like pastries on the side.
Right.
And it's kind of a hard mentality to switch back and forth from like baking to like cooking, you know.
Yeah. Okay, I see that. And so why'd you go to culinary school? What was the interest there?
I honestly just was looking for a school, like looking to go to college. Like I did pretty good in high school.
Right.
I got good grades. I could have done anything honestly with the GPA I graduated with. I did good enough, but I just didn't know what I was really planning on doing. And then in my later years of high school, I was like, I like to cook. We would like always ditch class and go to somebody's house and just make food all day. Like that's what I did, was just cook. I would cook at home for my parents, for my family. So then when I was looking into schools, I found Johnson & Wales in Denver, Colorado, and it was like a culinary school, but they offer you like a university program where you can get like an associate's and a bachelor's.
Yeah. I went to Providence, J. Woo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. So you're
Jay
familiar.
what? Jay Woo, motherfucker. That's
No
right.
way. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
cool.
hell yeah.
Yeah, so
it's a
you're
big party school.
You know
People
what
don't.
Jay Woo's about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, in Colorado, it was so small, so it was still a party school, but it was really small. It wasn't a big, like, I know the Providence campus was probably like way bigger and had a lot more.
Honestly, no, it wasn't. No, we
No?
were. So the picture that they show on the website of the Providence campus was the business school. We lived in the fucking shitty ass south side of Providence in the hood, son. Like, it was like the first night we were there, we watched kids get robbed at gunpoint.
Dang,
you know?
yeah.
And like, just because I'm from Meriden, Connecticut, so I'm like used to kind of, I know the street rules. So like, these dudes come over to our fucking picnic bench. And I'm like, if in the middle of the night, we're at this park, right? And so they're coming, they're walking towards us. It's me, my boy Tyler, and this other guy, and we're smoking a blunt. And as soon as I see them, I'm like, throw your shit like under your feet and like kick dust over it. Just do it. We do it. They come over. They're like, hey, anybody got change for a 20? We're like, nah, we're like smoking it, right? Then they go to this other table that has like maybe 9 people on it. And they're like, does anybody have change for a 20, whatever? They start pulling out their wallets. All of a sudden, a gun comes out, a knife goes through a throat. They rob the entire table and run off. And I'm like, if you didn't see that coming from a fucking mile away, some sketchy dudes in a park asking you for change.
And then you're just going to pull out all
Yeah,
your
then
stuff.
you're going to pull out your shit. Like, come on, man. That's not right.
Yeah, that was.
But how was J-Woo Providence for you guys? Were you guys in a cool neighborhood? Like, what was it?
Yeah, it was a nice neighborhood.
Right.
It was like in Colorado, but in Denver, but like kind of like the outskirts of Denver, where it was more of like a suburb kind of. It was a nice area. It wasn't really like you were worried walking around, and a lot of things were centered on campus. I left Fresno when I was 17 to go to J-Woo in Denver, so I'd never like been out of. It was my first time on my own, and I didn't feel like unsafe or anything.
Right.
But also, I came from Fresno. It's like.
Yeah, exactly. You're when you're already used to it. That's the thing. You're like,
It was like an upgrade to me.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, oh, there's like really fancy here.
Yeah.
I need to make sure.
I was pissed because it was the same.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, I thought I made it. I was like, I'm out of Fresno.
I'm like,
in
there's
this,
a
nice
Broad Street where
neighborhood.
all the Spanish people are on, all the fucking Dominican, Puerto Rican restaurants. I'm like, this is like fucking,
But it was a nice little. It was a nice way to like move away from home, because it was comfortable. It was chill. It's culinary school. It was fun,
Did your parents have a problem with you wanting to do culinary?
Not really. I mean, I think they kind of wished I would do something more because a lot of my family has worked in the industry, but only because they had to, not because they wanted to. So to them, it was like,
so why would
really,
you do something that I hate?
Like, yeah. And they're like, you know, when you have these good grades, you're obviously smart and ambitious. Why are you gonna go cook, kind of thing? But they never really told that to me like that. I just kind of felt it, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't think they realized where I was gonna take it, you know, because now they're like super proud that I'm a chef, that I've cooked in other countries, that I work here, you know, like
right.
They're stoked about it now, but like I think at first they were kind of hesitant, like, why does he want to do this? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, my mom never worked. She worked at McDonald's, but she never like worked at a restaurant, so she never got into like the culture of it. And for her, it was like exciting. You know, oh, he's cooking. Like, my son cooked. That's cool, you know?
Yeah.
But I could definitely talk to a lot of chefs who are like, my parents thought I was crazy, you know? Which is kind of fucked up sometimes. How long did you go, associates or bachelor?
I just did the associates.
Okay.
The idea was to go for the bachelor's, but once I did the 2 years and they were like, and I got my associates and I was already working, I was like, oh, yeah, I gotta just get into, I just want to work, you know?
Where were you working?
I was working at the bakery, and then I ended up doing an internship and kind of working for a little while at this other Italian restaurant. And I worked under a really cool chef who was from New York, but he was just like really good mentality of a chef to have. He wasn't like, he was kind of like very supportive into teaching, had a very like open kind of like hippie mind, where it wasn't like, I'm gonna yell at you and like I'm gonna train you with like love and care, as opposed to like, you know,
fear and death.
Exactly, yeah. And I learned that early on, that chefs like that do exist, and it's not just like because in culinary school they tell you like, oh, it's gonna be like this. You have to say yes, chef, and like, and then the first real like restaurant service kitchen I walked into, this guy was just like, yeah, you know, like, be comfortable, like, you know, whatever you need. Like, this guy would our dishwashers would call in, and I was like the intern or the new guy, and he would have me work the line and he would wash dishes, because he was like, you're not here, he was like, you're here to learn, like, and you're not going to learn anything by sitting over there. Like, I'll wash the dishes, you work the line so that you can get the most out of this. And like, I should have been the first person that they put on the dish pit, you know, because I was at the bottom of the line.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But in his head, he was trying to like change the way that people think, and like, he was like, no, that you're gonna learn because that's what you're here for, and I'm gonna work because this is my business, and you know, like, I'm responsible for that. So
what's his name?
His name is Valentino. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He was like I think some.
So he was straight from Italy.
No, he was Persian, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh, fucking crazy.
But he was a really cool guy, and he definitely inspired me to be like, this is what I want to do.
Right.
And I want to do it like he's doing it. You know, like, I don't want to do it like they're telling me in culinary school it's going to be. You know, I want to be like this kind of chef who is being progressive in his mentality of how to be like a mentor. Yeah. It's not just a boss. He was a mentor to everybody, and like, it taught me that, like, yeah, that does exist in the industry. It is something that's achievable, you know.
How long did you stay there?
I was there for probably about a year. And in Denver, I was only there for the 2 years I did school.
Okay.
So I did the first year. I was like in the bakery for like 8 months, and then I went and moved and did my internship and worked for him for about a year, I think.
Right. Yeah. And then you just wanted kind of out of Colorado? Do you want to come back home? Or
yeah, I ended up going back to Fresno for a little while. Yeah, after that.
Got it.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, I think I just... I don't know why I went back, but I was like, I'm going to just go back to Fresno and see what I can do there.
See what I can do.
Yeah.
Heard that. And what did you do in Fresno?
So I ended up getting a job at like what is considered the best restaurant in Fresno. Like, it's kind of hard because like there's not a lot there.
Yeah.
But there are people that have a lot of money. So there's this restaurant there called Crack Pepper Bistro.
Pepper Bistro.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds like it's going to be really bad at the beginning. Like when you crack pepper,
and
then you're like, you know what I mean? Like, what is the?
It was definitely like the most bougie, like close to fine dining.
Right, New York steakhouse vibes.
Yeah, like a lot of like grilled meats and lobster and like scallops.
That's what rich white people like.
Yeah, rich white people food, like Californian cuisine. You know?
Yeah.
But honestly, that restaurant taught me so much. Like, I worked for a chef who was from Lebanon. He was an immigrant.
Oh, dope.
He self-made, like, created his success by working through restaurants, and then opened up his business there. By the time I started working for him, they had been open for like 6 years, and we're like at the top of the everybody knew the name Cracked Pepper Bistro in Fresno. It was like, it was the place to eat, you know, and like people would go there as like their special events, and like it was just it was the highest I could shoot for in that town. So I applied, and he hired me, but I ended up working with these two Mexican sisters from Colima, and they literally like just grilled me into being like a great cook. Like,
that's amazing.
They till today are two of the best line cooks I've ever worked with, and they're like my tias. They're like 35, 40-year-old little like señoras. They're like, they have no interest in being chefs. They have no interest in the culinary industry. They just work. They just cook. They're just workers.
Right.
But the things that they have taught me, just from like little tricks to like just the mentality to have in a kitchen, I still take it with me for today. Like, I think about them every single day in my work and that what I do.
Right.
And they were also inspired me to go on to like go to Mexico and do a lot of other things. And I worked there for like almost 3 years, and I worked my way through that whole entire kitchen. I started garde manger, I worked sauté, and then I finished off on the grill. And I was like I worked every station 5 nights a week, every day they were open. Like, it was really what like solidified me as a line cook, as a cook, as a someone in the industry.
Your teeth.
Yeah. It taught me a lot.
Okay. And then on your way out, are you sort of thinking like, where am I going to go next? What am I going to do?
Yeah. So my plan was, okay, I need to get out of Fresno for number one.
Literally everyone's plan that lives in Fresno.
Yeah. It's either like, I'm going to stay here I'm going to get married and have kids and stay here forever, or I need to go. And I was like, I need to go. It wasn't really like, the restaurant environment wasn't healthy for me there, because people were just partying, and it was like, I was like, what am I doing with my days now? You know, I learned everything here that I could learn. So now what am I doing? And so my plan was to go to San Francisco or like a bigger city and try to cook there. And I ended up having one of my friends who was the GM at that restaurant had moved up to Humboldt County in Northern California.
Okay.
Because her boyfriend was going to college out there.
Right.
And she started working at a restaurant and was like, well, I hear you're trying to move, and I know you want to go to San Francisco, but I'm up here in Northern California, and I can get you a job, and like, it's a really cool place to be, and like basically like selling Northern California to me, like Humboldt County. And I was like, well, I'll just try it and see what happens. And so then I ended up going up there. And that also ended up being a great opportunity. I opened a restaurant. I had an executive chef position at 24. Like, I was running 2 restaurants while at the same time. Like, it ended up being a crazy, great experience for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, I want to leave Fresno, and that just opportunity presented itself, and I went for it.
How long did that whole endeavor?
That was like about 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah. And I showed up just to be a line cook, just to have a job. And then immediately with like the experience, I equate it to like what these 2 ladies taught me.
Right.
Because of these 2 ladies, within like 3 months, I was promoted to like the manager. Within 6 months, I was executive chef. Within a year, I was opening a second restaurant, and I was designing the menu.
Right.
Like, it was just like, it like springed me forward so fast in the industry. And I don't know if you're familiar with like Northern California, Humboldt County, but it's where they grow a lot of marijuana, and it's what really like drives the economy up there, or it did at that time. It's kind of changing now, but so a lot of people had money, a lot of people were into food, and like up there's a lot of natural resources. It's like the chef's paradise of places to cook. Like, you get fish directly from the ocean, from the fisherman, like caught it today, brings it on his truck, brings it to your restaurant. You decide which fish you want. Kind of like, it's an oyster bay. There's like the forest where there's tons of like wild mushrooms that are being foraged, and like hippie foragers come to your kitchen with baskets, and they're like, look at all these mushrooms I picked today. You want to buy some? Like, it's an amazing place to be. It's magical. Like, I say, like, as soon as you pass the redwood curtain, it's like you're walking into like magic land. It's crazy.
Really?
But yeah, I cooked up there for a while. I opened a restaurant up there. I still have a lot of ties. Like, I go back there. I did a pop-up like last November there. And just because the opportunity presented itself, I know people there that own businesses. And it was such a success. Everybody was like stoked. Like, it's just a cool community in space. It's just kind of small town Philly. You know, it's really easy to create a sense of community. There. Yeah.
Okay. And then what is your food? What is the pop-up menu?
So the pop-up menu I did was I came back from Mexico City. I traveled to Europe, and then I was like, this was my first time coming back to Humboldt after having traveled for so long. And I wanted to kind of create food that was like with things that I learned and flavors that I learned in Mexico and like just throughout my travels, but using ingredients from that area that were like seasonal and like, so I went to one of my friends' farms who I had worked on like during the pandemic. I went up there for a couple months and worked on their farm, and I harvested a bunch of stuff that was available during that time, and I centered my menu around that. And so it was like kind of like farm to table, but like Mexican, kind of finer dining Mexican.
Right.
So I did like tostadas and like chilatole and like tamal, but with like the ingredients from those farms that were like available at that time.
Right.
Because it's a very like seasonality kind of place, because it is Northern California, but they have a lot of rain, and like it is a colder area in California. So like certain like spouts of the year, they'll have different stuff available, and you kind of like got to jump on it during that time. So
Right.
But I really like I showed up, I harvested from the farm, and then the next 2 days I cooked and prepped and did like 2 dinner service. So everything I used was like harvested
amazing
within days. Yeah.
And then from your hands, dude, I know that hustle, and that is fucking hard to do. So
yeah, it was honestly, I didn't know how I was gonna pull it off the whole time, because
Right.
I was working 3 jobs here before I did that.
Right.
So I went from I was working 3 jobs, and then I was like, I need 5 days off so I can go do this. And then I went and like did all that in 5 days, and then came back.
Right.
It was
And then
insane.
to work, right? Came
But
back to work.
it was cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I had fun, and the fact that I pulled it off and it was a success was like really
Right.
you
I
know,
think that's what
rewarding.
keeps us in it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we get to the carrot is dangled every day.
Yeah.
And we get to reach up and fucking at the end of the night crunch on that motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes you might break your teeth, but other times you kill it and you feel good. And I think chefs do a really good job of, not all of us, of like letting shit go. Like we'll have our hard time, we'll have our fucking mopey shit, but then afterwards we're like, okay, back to it, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's super important, is to like every day realize that, okay, I finished the day, it was what it was, but then tomorrow there's a new day. You know?
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to have different challenges to present itself, different like fires to put out, different like successes that you're going to have, and you got to just kind of like move forward, you know? You can't just sit there and lick your wings for too long, otherwise you're going to be stuck in this like
Exactly.
down mentality, you know? Don't take it home with you. It's like, all right, it happened, we're done.
Yeah.
Well, just don't do that tomorrow.
Right.
Or do it better tomorrow. You know?
Exactly.
Like,
I always said there's a coat rack outside
yeah.
the
For
fucking
your
door.
problems.
Exactly. And you just put the fucking work coat on when you come in, take it off when you leave, and then we'll be good, you know?
Yeah.
Cool. So you traveled a little bit. What inspired that, and where's the first place you went?
Yeah, so after I did Humboldt,
Right.
you know, I opened a restaurant there. I also quickly like outgrew that community in terms of like I had opened a restaurant. It was very like successful in terms of like immediately it became like one of the best restaurants in that little community.
Right.
And so
Which is huge.
I felt like I wasn't really learning anything anymore. I was just teaching people, which
Right.
I enjoyed to a certain extent, but I was really young, and I felt like the person I was becoming to in order to be like this boss of so many people I wasn't ready for that yet, you know? Like I still felt like I had some learning to do myself, and that I was like kind of like faking it till I make it kind of thing, which
Yeah.
worked, you know? But at the same time, for my own personal growth, I felt like I was like I wasn't really giving myself all that I could in order to like learn and reach my full potential. And so even though I was like really at the top in that little community and aspect, I still felt like I wasn't growing anymore, you know?
Right.
So I decided, also it was a weird time because it was like when Trump was getting elected, and this community is like very far away in California than like if you were to live in San Francisco or in Los
Right.
Angeles.
Its own
like,
little bubble.
There's a lot of like, yeah, it's a bubble, and there is still a lot of like racism, and like there's not a lot of ethnic people up there. It's like, it's kind of like, you know, like, so I felt in that sense as like a brown man that like there was something that wasn't connecting for me and that I needed to figure out.
Right.
Especially during that time in like the United States of like all this like racial tension that I'm sure a lot of people didn't feel, but I felt it for some reason.
Yeah, white people don't feel it.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, exactly. And I was surrounded by white people. So it was like, okay, you guys don't understand that this is not cool for everybody, that all these things are going on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was like, well,
the comments, the fucking, the quiet racism, I think, is the worst.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was, and I mean, like, I never experienced like too bad of racism there. As far like, honestly, I experienced it more in Fresno than I did there. But I felt like this tension, and I also felt like a need to like go and travel. You know, like I was at that point, I want to travel.
Right.
So my first plan when they were like, well, what are you gonna do? I was like, I'm going to Mexico. Like, I need to be around Mexican people.
Right.
Like, I just need it. I don't know why.
No, I'm telling you, I went there twice. I mean,
like,
it's amazing.
So my plan was to just go to Mexico as like my introduction to traveling, because I know enough about the culture that it would be like an easy introduction to traveling, and then from there I can go all over the world, you know? And so in that plan, I was like, okay, I'm going to apply for an internship at Pujol, because, like, why not aim high? And then if that doesn't work, then, you know, work my way down. But I'm going to shoot for the top. Like, my number one place that I wanted to work at that time was Pujol. So I was like, I'm going to just apply and see what happens. So I applied, didn't hear anything back. And then I went and visited Mexico City for a couple weeks, and Oaxaca. I was there for, like, a month. And then I applied again, and then I got the acceptance to like for the internship, and that was like my in to like going. You know, I'm just gonna go for this internship, and then after that, see what happens. And then the pandemic hit, so it was like I got accepted to start like April 1st or something like that, and then the pandemic shut March 20th. Everything shut down for the pandemic, so then I was just stuck, and I was like, okay, well, I ended up like hanging out with my grandma, you know, like not doing anything, waiting for them to be like, they were like, we'll let you know when you can come or whatever.
Right.
So I was just like waiting. I was working a bunch of jobs in Fresno, like cooking and doing some deliveries and just like saving up money, because I was like, I know I'm going to go to Mexico at some point. So I'm just going to just like stack money. And then they hit me up and were like, okay, you can come in the summertime for your internship. So then I just went and I started my internship there. I did like just the 3 months of an internship, and then they ended up needing me to stay on, because like I told you, all of their staff was like leaving. They were like so short staffed, and I had really quickly like learned everything I needed to learn, and they put me on salsas, and I learned that whole station really quick as an intern. It was like, and so when my internship was up, they were like, if like we want you to stay, we want to like hire you on as a cook. So then I stayed with them for as a cook, but not really. Like I wasn't really hired on because I didn't have a visa. So I was
right.
I was kind of like, I was a cook, but I wasn't technically like contracted.
Right.
Because I would have to get a visa first.
Right. So a little under the table action.
A little bit,
I
yeah.
hope.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't getting paid what everybody else was getting paid.
Right,
but
yeah.
I was getting paid more than if I was an intern. So
Yeah.
To me, it was cool. I had saved up. I had saved up a bunch of money anyway, so it wasn't like I was like needed to work to live there. I was more just like doing it for the experience, you know. In general, I did that whole thing for the experience, not to make money.
Right.
And
which is almost the best thing you can do in life.
Yeah, if you're just trying to make money, that's all you're gonna get out of life.
Like, exactly.
And that's like not.
There's millionaires that are fucking so sad, like sadder than poor people, you know. And it's like, money isn't all that's worth it.
Yeah, and so I worked as the salsero there for like 6 months, and then it was still during the pandemic. Crazy times being a restaurant, especially that kind of restaurant. Like everybody was just like all over the place. Everybody was like chickens with their heads cut off, because like people were getting sick and calling out, and like there was all these procedures that we had to do, but they were still trying to operate at like a high enough level to cover the costs, and it was a shit show, honestly. It was my grand dream to work at this restaurant, and then I got there and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
This is not cool in any aspect, you know?
Yeah.
And then Mexico City shut down again. Like they shut down the city, which means the restaurants had to close and everything. During like
Were people quarantined, staying inside, or were there parties?
Well, I mean, it's Mexico City, so.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. But they shut down restaurants again, which was a big thing, because they have like this stoplight system. So like based off of what color that the government says we're on, like certain businesses have to operate at certain levels. So it reached like the worst one, where it's like, okay, everything has to shut down for a couple weeks. Because of like Christmas and the holidays and stuff, they like strategically were like, okay, this period of the year we're going to shut down. And because I wasn't technically contracted, and because like shit got really tough before like those last couple weeks, I was just like, you know, I came here, I did what I came out here to do, and like I feel like I don't have time to enjoy my travels. I'm just working. Like, at that point I was working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Like, literally no time barely enough time to eat, barely enough time to like do laundry. It was work, work, work. So at that period when they were like, okay, you guys, we're going to kind of like close. We don't know what's going to happen when we're going to open. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to part my ways here because I'm technically just here like for me. You guys, you guys aren't paying me what I should be getting paid. I'm not like,
you're still getting roasted the same.
Yeah.
Still get treated
still
like a
yelled
fucking
at.
employee.
All of my mise en place getting thrown on the floor by the chef. Like, it's
I
like,
heard the dishwashers were fucking crazy too.
I mean, the dishwashers when I was there, were pretty cool. It was the chefs that were like
crazy.
They were crazy. Yeah.
Right.
And like everybody just accepted it as that's what it was.
Well, it's the best restaurant in town, right?
Yeah. They would say it all the time.
Best.
We're the best. We're the best. And you guys are machines. They would say. And like it was cool. I mean, honestly, I learned so much from being there. But that mentality is not healthy for anybody to be in, physically or mentally.
Right.
I would come home and my brother was like, "Are you on drugs, bro? Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "No, I'm just like tired and hungry." Like,
right.
I was like so skinny and so like broken down. But in my head, I was like, I'm completing my dreams. Like,
this is it. Yeah.
And so then I was like, no, there's like bigger things out here for me in Mexico. Like I immediately fell in love with being in Mexico. So
okay.
I left Pujol and then I traveled around. I went to like Oaxaca. I went to Jalisco. I went to a couple different states and just kind of like traveled Mexico. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to Mexico City and work again, get another job somewhere else and continue to like work in this industry and grow my knowledge and learn Spanish because I didn't know Spanish before I went to Mexico. We weren't taught Spanish in my household. Yeah.
Even your grandma was like,
my grandma spoke to us in Spanish, but we would speak back to her in English.
Right, and she wouldn't get mad about that?
No.
She kind of just
kind of accepted it.
She's kind of like, whatever.
Yeah. But she wouldn't speak to us in English.
Yeah,
she spoke English, but she just didn't speak it. She didn't like to talk in English unless she had to.
I remember one time I was talking to my mom about some kid in school, and I was like, oh, yeah, Louis Guzman. And she's like, Guzman. Guzman. And I was like, oh, shit, my bad,
No, I think my parents were kind of traumatized because they were like the first generation Americans.
Right.
And because my dad used to tell us all the time, no, you need to talk right. You need to talk like you need to speak right. Like, don't talk like that because they're going to think that you're like less or like they're going to treat you differently. Like, you need to speak proper. You need to speak like you're educated because I work hard for you to be educated,
Right.
And so they were their first language was Spanish, both of my parents. And I think they had a lot of like discrimination as kids growing up. So when we were born, they were like, you guys are going to speak like Americans. Like,
right.
And I can tell it was just directly a result of that because they didn't teach us Spanish. We understood it, but we didn't have to speak it because they wanted us to sound like we were American,
Do you think that your name has to do with that? Because, like, obviously Miguel is but Michael.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we all have, like, American
right. Not
names,
like Socorro.
Yeah. And then growing up, I would always say Aguilera. And now since I've come back from Mexico, I was like, no, my last name's Aguilera.
That's right. It's Aguilera,
it
son.
It sounds so weird saying Aguilera.
That's like I used to say to everybody, David Galati.
Yeah.
And, like, that's what everybody calls me. And I'm like, it's Guillotti. It's like, what the fuck do you want from me, man? It's like what it is, Crazy. So you left Pujol. You did all your little travels there. You went to Europe?
No, I went to Europe recently. That's
okay.
Before, like, when I came back to the United States.
Okay, got you.
After Pujol, I worked at this other restaurant that was also like a high-end fine dining restaurant in Mexico City called Amelia, or M, under a chef named Lucho Martinez.
Okay.
And that was also another really great experience.
Neighborhood is that in?
That's in Roma.
Roma Norte.
Kind of, not Norte. It's more like South Roma.
That has all the restaurants.
Yeah, I lived down the street from there.
Right.
So like I moved in with some friends that I met my first couple months living in Mexico, and they had an extra room, and they were like, yeah, we'll rent it out to you. And it just happened to be 5 minutes walking down the same street to that restaurant, which I was already planning on applying to.
Oh, wow.
So it worked out like where I got a job and a place to live on the same street. And I worked there for like almost a year with Lucho. And yeah, that was a good experience too. I learned a lot. It was really, really cool to be in like the middle of like Mexico City's food scene. I was really in the middle. I was working with chefs all over Mexico, because in Mexico all the chefs like collaborate with each other.
Yeah, there's a community.
There's not really so much competition as
Right.
it is collaboration, you know.
I feel like that's changing here in LA too. It's becoming more of a community.
Yeah.
And the Bay Area needs to fucking catch up. Because those motherfuckers up there is like, it's like, don't eat my lunch. You know what I mean?
No,
And it's like, bro, let's go. Everybody could eat.
No, it's so cool because then you're cooking with chefs from other restaurants, and you're getting to like, you know, see what else is out there, and all collectively like growing the industry together instead of like growing it through competition amongst each other. You know?
Right.
So it was a really cool experience to do that too, because I worked with a lot of chefs in Mexico City. Like they would just come in and they were his friends, or they had a restaurant in town that people knew about, and we would do like collabs, you know. And then I would do like off-site events, private events where you'd go to this like bougie ass fucking
house in Mexico City,
mansion house, and just do a private dinner for them,
right,
with like all their staff there. And like,
where are the mansions in Mexico
Los Lomos.
City? Okay,
there's a place called Los Lomos, which is like next to like Parque Chapultepec. It's like on the other side of the park that the normal like Reforma and stuff is.
Right.
And that's where like all the rich bougie like people live. And
right,
there's
right.
mansions and houses, communities of like, yeah.
And you know, you worked at some high-end restaurants, you know, in Mexico and probably elsewhere. What is the biggest difference of like a Mexican rich person? Is it the same as a white rich person? Would you say? Like,
honestly, yeah. I think it is the same.
Right.
I don't think there's one in Mexico there's this thing they call like whitexicans, which are like the rich kind of like privileged Mexicans.
Yo, that's
and they
fucked
tend
up,
to be like because there is a lot of colorism in Mexico.
Right.
So they tend
Everywhere.
to be like the fair skinned, like, you know, I'm not all of them, but most of them tend to be like fair skinned,
right,
more educated, more kind of like refined bougie kind of people, which are the people that we're feeding at, you know, like Pujol and these other restaurants. Those are the people I'm feeding. I'm not feeding the Mexicans that work at the market or that work on the corners or like that, you know. We're feeding the elites, I guess, or the people that consider themselves elites because they have money in Mexico, which is like a rarity, you know, like to be like a rich Mexican.
Right.
So, yeah, but I don't see any difference between them and like a rich Californian person.
Right. So like, at a certain point that you become the money.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it's just like,
it's your personality.
Yeah. Because something that I've realized working for rich folk is that they're all about sort of like showing off to each other. Who has the biggest boat? Who has the biggest jet? Who has, you know, and it's just like a pissing contest. And it feels to me, I'm like I want to be financially stable, but I don't need to like show off. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I'll have my shit that I like, my nice car, my whatever, but it's not like a means to an end of like, we need to have a mansion and we need to have servants. Because I've seen high net worth people, man, and they got a whole staff dealing with their kids, bro.
For real. I would go to these houses and we would be doing like private dinners, and their staff would be there like taking care of the kids. The kid would walk in the kitchen and be like, oh, I'm hungry. And then they would really quick like go and have like everything like a system, like, okay, snack time. And they would make like all these snacks, and then grab the tray and take it to the kids in the room.
Always super like, so sorry, chef.
I'm like, damn, if I would have said that at this kid's age, if I would have just walked in the kitchen and been like, I'm hungry, like I would have got yelled at, or somebody would have been like, well, then make yourself some food.
Yeah,
or like,
exactly.
You know, like, or we're hungry too. What are you going to make us? Like, but no, it's like, it's crazy to see that like in Mexico, people have a staff that just live at their house to just do day-to-day things, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. House managers and shit, that whole world. Nannies, bro.
Yeah.
Nannies is wild. All right, so Emilia, right?
Emilia.
Okay, so you're there for the year. What are you thinking when the year's coming to an end? Are you kind of already seeing the end? Are you seeing like...
No, honestly, that...
Or just because of COVID?
No, COVID was starting to chill out during there.
Okay.
I feel like COVID ended my like Pujol stance because it got really weird in terms of like people getting sick and them not telling us that people were sick, and just like, and it was still in the middle of like before vaccinations, so it was like everybody was like scared, you know. But by the time I started working at Emilia, like vaccinations were coming in, it was kind of like chilling out. I honestly like really, really liked that place, but I felt like I came to Mexico to learn more about Mexican food, and I was working in like fine dining, so I was cooking for like gringos and like people that were foreigners, you know. We weren't, and we were cooking like Mexican food to a certain extent, but it was still like a fine dining restaurant. So like a lot of the food that we were cooking was like accessible to, you know, foreigners' Mexican food. It wasn't like real. I wasn't learning exactly what I felt like I wanted to be learning. So, and I was starting to like feel like my time in Mexico was going to come to an end soon because of a bunch of different things, like financially and just like mentally. I needed some sort of change, you know? So before I left, I was like, well, I think I'm going to be leaving soon and like going back to work in California for a while. And I want to really still get what I came here for. And so I ended up working at Molino and Tortilleria, and basically kind of just like as an intern. I was like, I'll come and work for you guys. I just want to learn how to nixtamal maíz. I want to learn more about like working with maíz. This company, they only work with like maíz criollo, which is like kind of like
hecho en casa.
Yeah, it's like artisan artisan corn.
Yeah.
But basically their idea was that they're going to continue to use this corn that is only grown by certain farmers that continue to grow this maíz in like the ways that it has been grown in Mexico for years, that's sustainable for not only like the community but for like the land and the environment. And like they're going to continue to use this product so that people can continue to grow it that way. Because in Mexico and in the world in general, like the corn monopoly and like the business is like it's veering far away from what actual corn was, and how it, and you know, like the nutrition content it had, like how it affected the communities that were growing and producing it. It's now like all becoming big business. It's getting watered down. It's being hybridized. Like it's just like it's not what it's taking a veer, you know.
Yeah.
And this company was trying to keep it back to like it's what it was originally, or what it should be for the land in Mexico, because it's a huge staple in Mexican cuisine is corn, but like most people don't really understand like the qualities in it, you know, and what it means for like the farmers and the communities that are growing it. So they were like, we're going to continue to buy this type of corn, even though it's like harder to grow.
Right.
It's harder to work with, and we're going to use it and make like tortillas and masa with it so that we can keep these communities growing it, you know. And so I started working for them. I learned how to nixtamal maíz. I learned how to make tortillas. I learned all this kind of stuff about masa, and that really just opened up my world too to another like what I want to be doing, you know. It's like working with that ingredient, that product, continuing that kind of work going forward, you know.
Right. Okay.
And then I did that for like 3 or 4 months before I left Mexico, and then I came back to the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fresno again, or?
I stopped in Fresno. Yeah.
Okay. Say hi to mom. And then,
Yeah.
and then bounce.
I always go back to Fresno.
Yeah.
I mean, all my family.
I mean, it's home, bro.
Yeah.
You know, it's all good.
I could just chill, and it's cool, you know. And there's work there for me too if I need it. But yeah, so then I moved back last year to the United States.
Okay. So last year you moved here. What are your plans? Do you want to start your own restaurant? Do you just want to get the lay of the land?
Honestly, right now my plans are focused on here and being here.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure for a while. I didn't really like LA when I first got here. I was kind of like a rough transition for me.
What didn't you like about it?
It just was like, I don't know. It never had drawn my attention before, and then I got here and it was just like really confusing. I didn't really like that, like how much like there's so much like money and bouginess, and then also so much like poor and dirtiness. And it's like on top of each other. It's like you see like
it's kind of crazy.
Fucking rich people in Balenciaga stepping over like homeless people on the street. Like
right.
It's so close to each other. And I don't know. There was just a lot of, personally, the people I was hanging out with were just not good people. It was just like it was really rough coming here. It wasn't like a smooth transition. Like all my other moves before this were smooth. They happened like naturally,
right. It sounds like
you know. It was like an opportunity presented itself. It naturally happened, and here it was like I really had to work to find like my place, my niche, like feel comfortable. And it wasn't until I found this place and started working here that I felt like, okay, this is something that is like, you know, significant for me, and I can actually, you know, like learn and grow here and just take like the next step into my career.
Right.
I mean, eventually I want to work with maíz again. That's my like long-term goal.
Right.
But right now I'm still trying to, you know, refine especially here, like refine my management skills, refine my people skills, you know, my ability to not just be a great cook, but also to like teach people,
right,
and to like learn the interworkings of what it is to actually be somebody responsible for like running the business as opposed to just like a worker, you know?
right.
Like I went to Mexico to work, not and to learn, and now I'm like here learning to like teach and to run shit, you know?
Right.
So
Right,
that's kind of like the phase I'm in now. Obviously, as a cook, as a chef, as somebody that is like determined and driven, I do want my own place eventually, but it's not like my main goal right now, you know?
Right. And the thing is that it doesn't need to happen right away. I think we all get mixed up with like youngest Michelin chef.
Yeah, no, I have
like,
no
bro,
interest in being like, yeah, I have no interest in being a young like entrepreneur. You know?
Right. It all come in its time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think for a while that was the narrative. Like, if you're not a chef owner, then you're trash. And
Yeah.
it's like, why can't I just be executive chef somewhere and like have someone else pay for the fucking light bill so I can focus on the food?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like, why do I need to
Yeah.
like? Because I remember I grew up in a small restaurant in Rhode Island, and you know, they had issues. So like the purveyors would come and be like, we're not dropping until we get a check. You know what I mean?
Dang.
That kind of shit.
It
And
was
like,
rough.
and now you realize that it's not necessarily like their fault. You know, there's a lot of things that happen. No matter how much you care about the food, if you don't have people coming in through the door, if you're doing something too new for the area, you're kind of fucked, you know? And it's sort of kind of like finding that middle ground of how we do the new, but don't forget the old.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like bring everything back under review. Like, okay, we've done this for years. And then it's like Libby's pumpkin puree, for example. Makes the best pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
You ain't going to make better than that, right? And that's just like, as a chef, I feel like the humble ones are like, they understand that. And then the ones that are like, no, my fucking pumpkin pie is the best. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, bro. Like, someone's grandma's pumpkin pie is better than the greatest chefs in the fucking world.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what you sort of get from Chef Kat. Like, she has got this motherly way about her that she
Yeah.
doesn't even realize she has.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it makes you be like, well, I want to do fucking whatever I can to make sure that this woman is happy and making money.
Yeah.
And, like,
That's so funny because that's really what I think, too. Like, the first day I tried her she made family meal, like, soup. And I tasted it, and I like felt like my grandma was like hugging me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why this
Yeah.
fucking soup like made me. I had like this emotional experience, and
Yeah.
I'm like, this woman just made a family meal. It was
Yeah.
not she, but there's so much love in it, you know.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, and I see that too. Like, I'm here to support that. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think that's honestly what kept the longevity of me at the restaurant. You know, because yeah, you're serving those fucking rich white folk and whatever it is. And you're having hard services, but like, you know that at the end of the day they care, versus somebody who's just railing you because the big boss upstairs cares. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I honestly, I just think that how much they take on of like the individual person who works for them is unmatched. To this day, I've never seen it anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? So they're truly one of a kind, and I can't wait to see sort of the empire they build out of this place. Because once this place pops off, there's no telling like what they can do, and I'm so excited and happy for you to have this position for sure.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's been great for me. I feel like I came in at a good time, and it's mutually for me and them, like, you know, beneficial. We're like, they're helping me, I'm helping them, so it works out pretty good.
Dope, man. Well, it was a fucking damn pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, no worries, man. I can't wait to shout you out. And, you know, is there anything you would like to say to your family right now?
I mean, my family, they know.
They know what's up?
They know that
All
I
right.
appreciate them, and I'm here for them first and foremost, you know.
How about a young cook out here trying to make it? What would you say?
I think what we talked about when we first started was just like being true to yourself, you know, and like not feeling that you have to do something to be a certain way, or like, you know, like what you believe is right, and like do it for the reasons that you want to be doing it, not for like the clout, not for like to be the best chef ever, not to like open the highest end fine dining restaurant for any Michelin stars. Like, do it for yourself, and like grow, like compete against yourself, be better for yourself, and like everything else will fall in line.
Right.
You know, chasing these accolades or chasing something that other expectations are not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
Or they're not going to make you happy, you know? You got to really just stay true to yourself and do what you do for the reasons that you want to be doing them, you know?
Right.
That's it.
Fuck yeah, Chef. Heard that. Socio Talk Podcast. Live from Yangban, LA. Come down here. What's the address?
712 Santa Fe Avenue.
All right.
Arts District.
Arts
Los
District.
Angeles.
Right across from the Stumptown Coffee. And what's this other coffee place over here?
Kodo, I think.
Kodo?
Yeah.
Okay. Dope. All right. Peace out, guys. Signing off. Get a little peace sign in the camera.